All right, perfect. So basically today we're going to go through the unit 3, which is strategic human resource management. We're going to go through learning outcome number 1, which is understanding the role of management of human resources. So just going to quickly take you through the different learning outcomes for this.
Okay.
Um, Basically, we're just going to quickly go through how we have to justify the importance of human resource management in an organization. And then we're going to talk about the role and the purposes of strategic human resource management functions. There are also a couple of models that I'm going to take you through in this presentation. So just going to quickly go through those different strategic human resource models first, and then we're going to go through the different parts in which the role and the purposes of strategic HRM, and also evaluate how HRM is related to the other functional areas. So at the end of this presentation, I have a little example, which is from basically a supermarket here in the United Kingdom. It's called Tesco. So just going to quickly give an example of that as well, and what kind of strategies in human resources they used that helped them essentially.
Okay.
Again, if you have any questions, doubts, just stop me immediately and I'll help you.
Sure.
So if you think of human resources, what essentially comes to your head?
It's basically when we discuss about the human resource, it's mean capital as sorry, the human capital we are discussing about the aspects about the employee in the company, staff.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, that is absolutely correct. So basically, human resources would be that section or that part of people who take care of the most important asset in the business, right? Which
Correct.
are basically the people working or the employees working in the business. Now, when I say strategic human resource management, that time it changes a little. So it's the same similar concept, but what we're going to explain is basically strategic HRM is that kind of, you know, basically different models or structures that are implemented in the business to push the organization or the business towards its goals, and also to push it to achieve those goals. So it can be very simple. It can be as simple as the HR department has created, a specific set of framework for the employees, so that there's a proper way in which they are hired, they are managed, and also they also look at if there's, so for example, there's a new hire that's happened in the business, all right? They have hired someone to work in the IT department, for example. Now, the IT department requires specific sets of resources. That's why they hired that person who has, probably a basic degree that is required. Or if they're good with, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with everything in IT, but probably good with Java. That's why they hired that person. But
Hmm.
how human resources puts in different development strategies. So if the company, or sorry, if the employee is working in the company, say for 2 years, in those 2 years, they probably give him enough training or adequate information so that he also familiarizes himself with, say, the SaaS enterprise model, which is basically a new software that's been introduced nowadays. So that's how they look at development of their associates. So that to the associate, it seems like, okay, I have been hired to work on Java, but I'm also just expanding my skills because I'm already good with tech and computers. I can get on a new skill, and that will basically, in the next 2 years, maybe they'll pay me more, they'll give me enough training to do better in that. That's how they look at development as well. And why did HR do that? Because at the end, they want associates after 2 years, because in their business plan or the organization goals, it said that they're going to start with Java and then they're going to move to SaaS enterprise. So that's why HR had put that strategy from the start itself, as soon as they hired the associate, so that they can support the organization's long-term goals essentially.
Okay.
So that is something that strategic HRM does. So also it basically plans every action to achieve long-term goals in advance. So for example, if the business is looking at growing say from 10 employees to 20 employees in the next 1 year, so HR will put different strategies in place to make that happen. So basically, they would say, all right, if in 1 year we need to hire 10 people, yeah. So roughly in 1.5 months, we will have to make one new hire so that we can reach that goal in the next 1 year. And they will direct all of the planning and all of the operations towards that. So they will push the entire organization and all of the people in the organization towards that goals. That's why strategic human resource management is getting so important as it supports the long-term goals of the business. And very simply, so what is a strategy basically? It is a plan of action. And what is management? It's controlling, people and managing them properly. So that's why how strategic human resource management comes into place.
Okay.
Now, what is business strategy essentially? So there are different business strategies that come up, and it depends on what or how the business is, choosing its business model. Now, it can be that there are different ways in which businesses operate. All right, one business might have, a very strict operational policy. All employees, a strict dress code policy. Employees need to talk to managers only in the hierarchy. They can't go to a very high management directly, right? Whereas an other business model might be a very relaxed atmosphere. You can dress as however you want. You can also, have the flexibility of working from home or working from the office, and you can approach everyone in the management team as well. Now it depends for which business what works. So in my head, I would say if there is a business that is doing, say, marketing or public relations, they usually have a very relaxed atmosphere because they have to come up with new, fresh ideas and always keep developing. Yeah. Obviously, I'm
Hmm.
just giving an example that's coming in my head. It can obviously vary from business to business because every business operates and functions in a different way. Whereas another business, which would be, say, IT, yeah, they would have a very strict policy because IT, there's a specific way in which they work. If they don't do, the proper process, everything's going to crash in the end. Everything's strict over there. Associates have to come in the office and work because, the systems are so advanced and so complex that if they try to do it from home, they might actually make some mistakes. Just giving a simple example. So business strategy obviously depends on which business that you're going to choose. But also, every organization has to have a way in which they manage people, and they also manage the different frameworks that they're using. And why is that important? Because obviously, if they have these strategies in place in the beginning, that's going to help them or help the HR team to push them towards their long-term goals. And also they will keep in mind all of the requirements that's needed, and also keep in mind the interest of stakeholders. So we're going to go through all of that in depth later on in this presentation. So I'll explain you what stakeholders are, how they come into the picture, and how that framework keeps the relationship between HR as well as the different aspects in that framework.
Okay.
So again, as I was mentioning, there is no single strategy that can be implemented that, all right, this is one strategy that definitely will be, helpful for this business. I don't think that works always because every business has to modify the strategies in their own way. Because, for example, there's a proper set of strategy that can be implemented in this specific business, say the IT business, but that might not always work because people react in a different way. And obviously, implementing a bookish strategy to an actual real life scenario is also very different. So that's why businesses usually modify it, uniquely in their style and how, the best way it works. But still, there are some basic different models of human resource management that I'm going to take you through. So I'm going to quickly show you those models and how they look and explain to you in brief how they look like so that, when the HR team is starting a business, this is the skeleton they use essentially. They might not essentially use every little bit of this strategy, but yeah, they do use parts of it, or they also might use two strategies together because that is working in their business. Yeah.
Hmm.
Is everything clear as of now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So now we're going to go through the different models of human resource management. This chart is just, in short, explaining how HR has, you know, evolved. So, before it used to only take care of the welfare of the office. Then they went on to labor management. Then they moved on to personnel management, which took care of all associates that are coming in and started keeping, when personnel management came into picture, that's when they started keeping staff files, started looking at welfare of the employees. And then human resources management came into picture, wherein they looked at, a more reactive approach, wherein, as and when things happen, they used to react to it. And now we're looking at strategic human resource management, which have, different sections in it, which I'm going to take you through later on, and how, HR business partners came into place. Do you know what an HR business partner is?
Basically, who are involved in the decision making, and they are providing the right resource at the right time. Like, we can say that the HR manager or the GM of HR department, maybe we can say them as a HR partner, business partner,
Yeah,
because they are involved in the business decision.
yeah, that is somewhat correct. But I'll give you just an example as well. So if you're looking at a very big organization, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that um has different departments, essentially marketing department, sales department, IT department. Just take three departments an example, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So the HR team would have different HR BPs, or sorry, HR business partners assigned to those departments. So for example, I am the HR BP for, say, IT. Like, what you said is correct. So then
Mm-hmm.
I am reporting to the IT department. I am looking at the business goals of IT department. So HR business partners are divided into departments then, because obviously one HR personnel cannot look at so many departments when it comes to a big organization, yeah? When it's a
Correct.
small organization, what you said is absolutely correct, because that one person is looking at all of the different functions of the business and pushing all of the people towards, doing better. When it comes to a big organization, there is one HRBP assigned to every department, and all of the disputes, for example, in the IT department, there is an associate who is fallen sick and is not coming in or is not motivated to do their job. Yeah. So then
Yes.
that business partner takes care of only specifically everyone in the IT department. And they know the goals of the IT department. They know how to push their associates. So they will come up with specified or modified trainings for the associates working in that department, essentially. There are different trainings that they can assign you to. So that's how the business partners work. So nowadays that is come into picture, wherein there's one person assigned, and they just focus on that specific department, and they need to understand the working of every goals that's required, especially for them. Now we're coming to the different frameworks that we were talking about, or the different models, and going to start with discussing the Harvard framework. So the Harvard framework is divided into different sections, I would say, or basically five critical elements that they're divided into. As obviously we can see, there are five different boxes, so five different elements. And what it explains is that how HRM makes specific policies or specific choices that keep stakeholder interests in mind, as well as the different factors that they're working on in mind. So keeping these two boxes in mind, how they make the different policies, which essentially result in different outcomes and different long-term consequences. So what do you know what stakeholders are?
Basically, who are affected on I mean the decision of the HR department.
Yeah. So in a business, essentially, stakeholders would mean um, just a party or people who are interested in the company doing better.
Hmm.
And whatever decision the company makes, they would be affected with that. So shareholders of the company would be a stakeholder, obviously. The employees working in the company would be stakeholders as well, because whatever decision the company makes would affect the employees working in the business as well.
Hmm.
You have investors, you have customers, you have suppliers, all of them come under stakeholder essentially.
Correct. Yes.
And what they do is they keep those people's interests in mind. So, for example, if the investors are saying that, you know, the business should expand and nowadays AI is coming in the picture. So they should do something related to AI now. Yeah, that's what a stakeholder suggestion is, or that's what the stakeholders are interested in. And keeping the situational factors in mind. So keeping, you know, what's happening around in the world, how is it going to affect the workforce, how is it going to affect the management, keeping all those interests in mind, the business or HRM would come up with new policies. One of the policy can be, start hiring people who are good with, say, these technology softwares which are coming up nowadays, good with Power BI, good with AI, stuff like that, and hire these people so that they can advise us how the company can push towards using AI more for basic decisions. Yeah.
Hmm.
And because of that policy that they implemented, or because of the hiring choices in this example that I gave you, it depends. Sorry, it comes, apologies. It basically gives us different outcomes. So, for example, if they're looking at hiring people who are good with artificial intelligence and those softwares, the outcome would be that the business would essentially, maybe in the next 1 or 2 years, push towards using artificial intelligence for basic decisions. So nowadays, AI is so vast and expands so much that maybe because of that, in the next 2 years, just giving a hypothetical situation again, because of hiring people who are good with AI and AI is implemented in the business, one of the outcomes of HR in the next 2 years would be that we don't need so many people who are working towards one goal because AI is making that easier. So we would look at basically pushing those people to get training and move towards different departments. Yeah,
Hmm.
that would be one of the outcomes. And that would essentially give out long-term consequences. Because basically, after 2 years, if that's happening, in the long term, that's how it's going to work, right? For example,
Hmm.
in the IT department, we might just need 5 people working now. So in the long term, we're going to implement that strategy itself and look at hiring people in different other departments instead of IT now. So this is one example in which the Harvard framework is used, wherein they use, different factors and policies to make it work. Now, HR policies obviously can change. It can work towards, say, just the reward system, or can work towards a management system wherein they're, keep making sure that different management strategies are implemented in terms of keeping a relaxed atmosphere, letting people work from home, and how employees are basically influenced in working towards doing better. So there are different factors that come into play, and every situation obviously differs. Is the Harvard framework correct? Understood as of now.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So moving on to the matching model of human resource management, or you can also call it the Michigan model, essentially. Both of them are the same models. Sorry, both the slides are the same models, essentially. So when I talk about, do you know what the matching model is?
No, seriously.
No problem. So basically, what the matching model does is it do you know what soft HRM and hard HRM is?
No, sorry.
No problem. That's just, I'm trying to just ask you things. I'm obviously going to explain them to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Harvard framework is a soft HRM approach, whereas the matching model is a hard HRM approach. And I'll explain you why. So, what soft HRM is essentially they are focusing on the human side of things. Like soft HRM is looking at, for example, in the Harvard model, we're looking at stakeholder interest, which is basically the human interest. Yeah.
Hmm.
So soft HRM is prioritizing people and prioritizing their potential and also giving them a meaning for their jobs, that would be soft HRM, whereas hard HRM is essentially focusing on, it's not very people focused. It's more focused on seeing the needs and then seeing and recognizing the individuals, that how they can provide those needs. So if a company needs something, to be done, they're just looking at individuals to getting that job done. They're not looking at what the people feel behind it, or how people, self-actualization for people, essentially, how they internally feel when they're doing that job. They don't worry about that. So that is hard HRM.
Oh, okay.
So the matching model is an hard HRM model, essentially, because it basically looks at achieving the goals and how the goals are achieved. They're not going to look at how the people feel working towards those goals. They're not keeping people's mind in consideration. For example, if it's a big business, they usually don't take every employee's feedback on board, right? They look
Hmm.
at management and what decisions they make, and then everyone has to follow that. So that would
Hmm.
be an example of hard HRM. So that is very similar to the matching model. And for example, in this case, they're looking at selecting people that are matching the jobs, getting the job done, and giving them appraisal for their performance, or giving them, brownie points, being like, you did a good job because you perform well.
Hmm.
And then again, rewarding them if they're doing better, to basically push them to do better, and looking at developing the same skills for them to do better. So they're not looking at what people feel. They're not looking at, okay, for example, how Sayed feels if he has to work in a marketing job. Yeah, you're doing well. Yeah, you're, pushing yourself, you're giving, output. But how do you feel when you're doing that job? They don't ask you that.
Hmm.
Now, it's called the matching model because if you see this triangle over here, it's a congruent triangle. A congruent triangle means all three sides of the triangle are equal. Now, why is that important? Is because um, in this case, all right. So, for example, matching model is also the best fit model that approaches human resource management. And it requires all the strategies to have a tight fit to the overall strategy of the business.
Hmm.
Why does that have a tight fit? Essentially, meaning in this case, you're looking at all of the forces, so economic forces, political forces, and cultural forces, towards one specific goal, which is the mission and vision of the business, the organization structure of the business, and essentially the human resource management structure of the business. So this model links the external factors and the internal factors that affect human resources. So they look at these three important external factors, which is cultural, political, and economic forces, and
Hmm.
how the external things affect the internal business function of human resource management. So, because last year, in 2023, say there was, because of globalization, there was a lot going on in the market. So there were so many business that had to cut down their force or labor force. So you
Hmm.
see so many people getting, out of a job, getting made redundant because the businesses couldn't afford them, because they weren't getting enough profits because of the market that's going on. And for example, economic forces also come exactly that thing. Sometimes political forces impact a business a lot. So HR or HRM strategies need to keep those ideas in place as well when they are making decisions to their business. And so that's why the model has less focus on employees' welfare, training, and development, but more focus on how the organization can use the resources in the best way possible, that they are not affected by the external market. Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yes.
Perfect. Now, moving on to the other model, which is the David Guest model of link between HRM and performance. So, in this model, essentially, um, if I just explain it to you very simply, what it does is it basically comes up with appropriate human resource practices that can essentially produce proper outcome. Yeah, very simply.
So
So
it also deals with the soft HRM or hard HRM.
I would say that this looks at hard HRM more
Mm-hmm.
because, again, you're looking at different strategies that you implement,
Mm-hmm.
how that affects the outcome or productivity, essentially the performance.
Okay.
So they're not looking at, again, how people are feeling or how is it changing, but
Mm.
they are looking at essentially that because of this specific business strategy or HR strategy, how is performance or productivity in the business getting influenced?
Okay.
Yeah. So again, it it basically, sometimes it can also be difficult because sometimes the business strategy can be um you know looking at employees being motivated. So then
Mm.
again it comes under soft HRM. But I would say that because it has many different um links to HRM, so it's difficult to just put a proper picture in it. But I usually would suggest it is hard HRM instead of soft. But again, it depends on which strategy of HR you're putting in place as well. Because sometimes different strategies might just focus on soft HRM essentially. So then obviously it's a soft HRM approach.
Okay.
Yeah. So this model essentially has different components. It would have flexibility, then it would look at high commitment from associates, and it would also look at strategic integration. So how a business strategy can link or integrate with the HR strategy. This model
Mm.
looks at that. So how can the business strategy and HR strategy come on a same or just agree to a same process and then implement it as an HR practice? That's why this table is explained like that. And then how these HR practices that are put into place. For example, if the business strategy says, the example that I gave before, looking at moving towards AI, the HR strategy agrees and says, okay, we're going to hire people that are going to focus on AI essentially. So the HR practice would be to hire more people. Then they're going to look at how effective it is. So is the recruitment team being able to hire these people or not? And as an outcome, what comes up with that, are those employees that have been hired, are they happy to do that job, not just for, towards pushing them towards the goal, but also in terms of their commitment and their flexibility. And then we look at the quality that they're producing in terms of output and the productivity from them, which essentially helps the business to be financially better. Does that example explain this?
Yes. Okay.
All right, perfect. So this is what the David Guest model of, or the David Urchel model of HR essentially means. Now moving on to the last model that I'm just going to explain, which is the sorry, which is the Bath people and performance model. Now this model, I would say, is again a little soft HRM approach because they are looking at people essentially and how people can do better, and how they can progress in the department. So it helps or basically motivates associates and also makes opportunities for them. If you're hiring someone in a big organization and that person was hired to basically say work in finance, yeah,
Yes.
but after working in finance for 2 3 years, that person realizes that, you know what, actually I'm very good at selling things, I'm very good at talking to people. So the business or the HR team realizes that with a little push and a little training and development, maybe that person can also do very good in a sales team, because the
Hmm.
sales team might also require someone who's looking at numbers.
Hmm.
Yeah. So he can use
Yes.
his skills in both ways. So that's how they create a career opportunity. So the performance, the Bath performance and people model essentially also creates um AMO in my head that I keep as the ability to perform. Firstly, it looks at that. Then M stands for motivation. That does that employee even have the motivation to do it? For example, I might be really good at numbers, but I have no motivation to actually put in the work and get some training done to, be good at Excel. I don't want to do it.
Hmm.
That's why I say AMO. So firstly, I have the ability, but there's no motivation. So again, this model wouldn't work. But if I have the ability and I have the motivation, then the HR team would create the opportunity for me to basically do well.
So, what is the best practice nowadays? The organizations are using these kind of models. Are they using all the models, or they are implementing only one or two?
So again, for example, if it's a startup, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that has say 5 employees, newly fresh graduates who have
Mm-hmm.
come up in the business and they want to create a new product or want to create something. So in that case, I would say that they would stick with the Bath people and performance model. Why? Because they have less resources.
Mm-hmm.
Because of less resources, they are looking at giving their employees more skills and resources so they can do better. So maybe they have one employee working on Excel, which is the finance part of it. That same employee is also looking at how AI can be implemented into the business. That same employee is also talking with people and working with the sales team. So it depends from business to business, obviously. So we cannot obviously just decide that, okay, this model is going to work for this business absolutely well, the matching model, and we're going to implement it because that never works. It depends on the business goals. It depends on the outside environment as well. How, because of new policies outside, there are changes to the business. So obviously, you cannot choose just one model and be like, yeah, that's definitely going to work for a business. But yeah,
Okay.
if you're looking at a specific sector, then I can suggest maybe I would say the finance sector usually looks at the Harvard framework model because they're very focused with numbers. They want things to be done. They're looking at outcomes and long-term consequences because they want to make profit in the end, right? Whereas if you
Mhm.
look at a marketing team, wanting to do better, I would suggest that they might.
Let me give the example of my organization, but I'm not sure what kind of model they are using it. But
Okay,
there
yeah.
is a, yeah. But in our organization, there is a structure of appraisals as well. Even the career opportunities also created. They review they also review time to time the job description, and they ask every department to submit their feedbacks on employers. Similarly, from the employee, they also taking the feedback about their managers. So such, I'm not sure what kind of model they are using. It might be possible it's a bath people performance model, or the David guest model.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say the same thing that it is a mix of both.
mhm,
In the David Guest model, as you mentioned, they are looking at appraisals, they are looking at salary benchmarking, they are
mhm,
looking at continuously updating you on your job. So they are having HR practices in place so that they can look at the best financial outcome. Because, if they keep giving you salary benchmarking and reviews like that, for the business,
mhm,
that's helpful as well because you will not look at leaving the business quite soon because hiring can be very expensive, right? You will
mhm,
look
yes.
at, all right, they are giving me commitment. They want me to be here. So obviously I will be here. They are increasing my salary every year. So I will be here. Yeah.
Mhm,
As well as they are giving you the opportunity to develop and perform better. They're pushing you towards your career goals. So it can be a mix of both. Also, for
mhm,
example, businesses also do salary benchmarking. Like when I work for an organization, what they used to do there is we used to do regular salary benchmarking every 2 years.
mhm,
I used to do that because, and some people never asked for it as well, but we still did it because for the business or for us, it's easier to keep the same associate for a long term. For
mhm,
example, I don't know if you know this, especially for IT departments, after COVID, the salaries have gone up. So if I was hiring an IT person for 40K, yeah, back
mhm,
in 2018, right now I'm going to hire the same person for say 70K. So
mhm,
salaries have shot up quite significantly. But if you're with the organization since say 2018 and you're getting salary benchmark and every year your salary is, increasing say 8%, 10%, you will still be at a 50K or a 55K salary, which still doesn't match with the outside salaries. As a business, it's financially cheaper. And as a business, it helps as well because hiring new people, the first 2-3 months is probation and they need to familiarize themselves and they only perform after that. So even that's a reason why that business keeps doing it. So that's why I say financial performance comes into picture.
Okay.
Perfect. Gonna move to the other slide now. This just explains difference between traditional HR and strategic human resource management now. So before we move forward and talk about strategic human resource management, I have a quick recording that I had seen, which is going to help. So when I explain, it's going to make things easier because this recording covers a lot of bits. Let me know if you can't hear this clearly, yeah?
Sure.
Resource management has gained importance in managing critical resources. Currently, SHRM has become more relevant in service organizations. The importance of strategic human resource management in an organization cannot be overemphasized due to the fact that human beings are the driving force behind any organization. One of the ways that strategic human resources management is beneficial to an organization is the manner in which it can pave way for growth and development while keeping the driving force happy and satisfied. How is this possible? Why is it so important? How can it help? Let's have a look. One company to do this correctly is X-Oil Corporation. It is the highest ranked Indian company among the global Fortune 500 companies. It has initiated several innovative HR schemes and in fact bagged many awards for their initiatives in this department. Right from making a commitment to enrich the quality life of its employees, to opening an institute to organize global standard international business management programs for its executives, the company has done some path-breaking work. So what exactly is strategic human resource management that can help a company achieve its goals effectively? It is the process of linking the human resource function with the strategic objectives of the organization in order to improve the performance. Each organization has its own ingenious HR style and techniques to create a high-performance work environment. Let's look at some types of HR strategies that can help a company avoid its pitfalls. Commitment strategy. In this strategy, the organization seeks to build up a strong commitment among employees through the commonality of interests between employers and employees. Compliance strategy. In this strategy, the organization aims at increased labor efficiency through improved labor, cost, and process control. Paternalistic strategy. The aim of this strategy is to secure labor efficiency through flexibility of staffing, workforce stability, internal promotions, and job permanency. Collaborative strategy. In this strategy, labor efficiency is achieved through need-based hiring of highly skilled labor and evaluating and rewarding them only through performance-based criteria. With optimum utilization of organizational resources, HRM easily paves way of sustained growth and development of any organization. To know more about the role and importance of HR.
This was just video which shows different HR strategies. Obviously, we're going to go through the strategies later on in our lecture, so not today. But it also just explains what strategic human resource management is. And
Can you
essentially,
please zoom in, please?
yeah, 1 second. Oops, too much. Is this better?
Yeah, no, the table you were showing earlier.
Or this just
Yeah.
difference between traditional and traditional HR and
Yeah.
strategic
Okay. Okay.
resource
Yeah.
management. So this just says what they used to traditionally do before and how they have adapted or changed things now. Like, for example, first HR was just seen as a cost center approach, whereas now it's seen as an investment center approach. Um, they used to look at employee relations, but now they look at how internal and external factors in the business affect the relations of associates and also the working of the business. So I'm not going in depth with this because we have it covered later on as well.
Okay.
And I've covered some bits on the top as well. But yeah, with the evolution of HR, it just explains how before HR we had a shorter table up, and this table essentially explains how firstly HR was only very narrowed down to employee welfare, labor relations, employee relations, and looking at just taking care of associates in general. It never evolved itself into looking at aligning HR strategies and business strategies, how HR can help with pushing people or promoting people to do better towards organization goals, or basically, how HRM can create a framework for employees to be hired, to be managed, and to be developed so that, again, they can support the organization's long term goals. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it was very related to associates and only employee relations. But now they're looking at how, there can be proper strategic HR planning. So now a strategic planning is probably done 2, 3 years in advance or 5 years in advance, depends on obviously the business. How higher managers in the business are involved in these strategic HR planning now. I spoke about HR business partners previously to you, so you are aware what they are. HR also looks at DNI framework nowadays, which is the diversity and inclusion framework, how diversity can influence the image of the company. So now they're looking at people coming in from diverse backgrounds and working for the company so that, that company can look basically can be looked at as a very diverse organization, which is
Hmm.
open to new ideas, fresh people. Nowadays, they've started with this thing called graduate schemes because they are getting new graduates in the company so that they can use that potential in the start and tap that potential there itself instead of hiring them probably 3, 4 years later after they've graduated on a 80K salary. They hire them on a 30K very
Hmm.
easy in the start itself. So that again comes up as a part of strategic HR planning because they mold them the way they want
Hmm.
if they hire them in the start itself. Yeah. Um, so wait, let me just go back to the table and see what else. Nowadays, it's a very proactive approach to HR. So they're looking at getting things done properly and sorry about that. They're looking at sorry, I was talking about proactive approach, right? So proactive approach essentially means how they understand the system before so that they know if they could fail in the future, essentially, they would be aware of that. So they very cautiously make decisions. Whereas before they were looking at, reactive, all right, we need this, let's do this. They did not see the future in mind, but nowadays they keep the future in mind a lot. So these are just some of the difference between the traditional and now the modern HR strategies that have been looked at. Now they look at organizations' effectiveness, organization goals, and they look at a lot more things that they never did before.
Hmm.
Now talking about just gonna do this. How you can critically justify the importance of strategic human resource management in organizations, yeah? So human resource management approach is basically focused on different things. It can be focused on recruitment, it can be focused on training associates, managing associates, helping the business, basically business partners. But strategic human resources links those objectives of HR with the business objectives. Mhm. So if
Hmm.
the business is looking at saving costs in the next 2 years, so the hiring would be less and HR would focus more on training of associates or development of associates, so that if you're in the company for 2 years, you're trained and developed in a way that you can also take on some additional work. And yeah, you're given a pay rise, but that pay rise would still be beneficial to the business essentially in the long term. Because hiring someone after 2 years for this doing the same task would be way more expensive to them. Just one example I'm coming up with, but yeah, this are many examples that can be there. I worked in a previous business wherein we focused on D&I a lot. So we had different initiatives we had planned. We did a lot. So now that company, if I look at it now, we see it as a very diverse place. They were given awards for diversity. There are people wanting to work for the company because it's a global organization. So there were these things are implemented from the start. And also HR looks at how they can be put out in the world for the world to see. So obviously, what you're doing in the company, they're just not going to be like, all right, we're doing a good job, but also how HR can, nominate the business for different awards, for different ways in which, they got like D&I awards and everything. So again, just a simple example again.
Hmm.
So strategic human resource management looks at improving the skills of the associates so that the problems of the business that happen that can be managed. And also they take actions in the start itself. They don't look at taking actions. That's what I meant by proactive and reactive. They don't look at taking actions when they happen or when something goes wrong, but instead they look at taking actions from the start so that before anything goes wrong, they already have a plan in place. So they think of all of the ways in which things can go wrong in the start itself so that they can implement those plans in the future, essentially. And they also look at employees' productivity, motivation, and skill. They look at many factors that are in place. Now, they also might face some issues. For example, there are obviously issues that happen in a business. You know, employees are not participating that much. For example, especially since work from home has started, employee participation and employee motivation have gone down a lot because the employees are disconnected from the business.
Hmm.
They don't essentially come in the office. They have not seen the culture of the office. They don't know what they're working towards. They just know that they're working, they're getting paid. So, how to make sure that these work from home associates are engaged equally? So, for example, where I used to work previously, they had these different sessions which were weekly, very simple sessions. I remember one of the simple sessions that I used to do was weekly sessions of sitting yoga. So they had a Teams call for half an hour. They hired someone who used to show us sitting yoga exercises, which made no sense. But for
Hmm.
people who are working from home, it's so simple to get them engaged. They're like,
Yeah.
oh,
Good.
they can
Hmm.
remove half an hour from their working day. It's not like, they have a lot to do, obviously, but there were so many associates that removed half an hour because they were like, you know what, we can see others doing the same thing on video. It just engages them. So that's how HR comes up with different strategies to engage people. They also look at the reward system. So, for example, work from home associates, they might not just get motivated from getting a proper pay, but they might be motivated from other factors as well.
Hmm.
So one example that I used to work for a business, they had this points that they used to provide. So if you did a good job, they used to give you these points, and everyone in the organization knew you got those points because it used to come on the organization's portal. For example, Arshi gave Sayed these many points because he gave an outstanding presentation, something like that. And that
Hmm.
was such a motivating factor because those points could be used towards, they were basically monetary points, but they put it as points because they could be used in the company's website, and that website had all sorts of things. It had vouchers for Amazon, shopping vouchers, every little voucher. It had items that were on subsidized rates. They had Apple AirPods on subsidized rates as well. So if you got enough points, you could buy any of that. So it was not just me buying items, but also me being recognized in front of my colleagues that, oh, I did
Hmm.
a job, that's why I got these points. So businesses come up with various different ways in which they make sure that, employees are committed and also motivated to do better. And how they tackle these issues can obviously vary from business to business. So in this example, the few implemented things are internationalization of market integration, significant technology change. So even technology change, I remember, was such a big deal because some associates who have been in the business for say 20 years, 15, 20 years, there were new technology being implemented in the business. And I think for them, it got difficult to catch on. So again, how businesses came up, how that business where I worked before came up with a specific strategy to train them and also not make them feel that they require that training. Because when you're on such a high level of management and there is a change in the way they use technology, I feel the younger generation catches up on this technology change easier, whereas the older generation feels that, you know, why are we supposed to be trained, or why is there supposed to be a change?
Yeah, they are reluctant. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So then HR came up with a proper strategy wherein how they were trained, and they weren't even felt dumb when they were getting that training, because the way they changed the strategies to like together, work on one model or work on a problem. They gave them real life problems and how to implement those new technology into place. So when they were using those technological changes to work on those problems, they realized how useful it is. So there are basically different factors that HR comes up with that helps with these specific problems.
Hmm.
Um, Moving on, also assessing the role and purpose of strategic human resource management in different activities in the organization. So there are so many activities that organizations come up with. Um, you know, for example, there was Women's Day, yeah. I
Hmm.
was working in an organization. It was actually my first job a couple of years ago, and I was a fresh graduate, so my ideas were very less likely to be taken on. That's what how I felt in my head. But just to make sure that, I get empowered and I feel like I'm being heard, they implemented my strategy in one of the Women's Days festivals. I had come up with this safety keychain which can be distributed to women across, wherein they pull a trigger and there's a loud beeping noise.
Hmm.
As a
Okay.
graduate or as a person who is just joined the business, in my head, I was like, oh, it might be such a silly idea. But when I saw that idea gone into place and how, HR took that idea on board and, how strategically they empowered me, I got so confident then and I started producing more new, fresh ideas. I came up with a lot of more workload ideas. So that's how they put different strategies and also motivate people, and how these different strategies or activities that they do in the company also help associates to learn a lot or get empowered a lot or be more successful essentially in coming up with new fresh ideas, working hard, getting motivated, getting engaged with the business, and also working towards the goal of the business in the end. Now, how they come up with a strategy. We're going to talk about strategies in the next lectures that we're going to go through as well. But how they come up with a specific strategy and how it's understood. There is a lot of planning that goes into the process of developing a strategy in an organization, because in their head, that strategy is going to remain with the organization forever, essentially, right? But if you look at the next 5 years as well, how that strategy is going to impact the organization and how they keep in mind, all of the factors that are responsible, and also look at the changes that are external changes that are happening. Like, yeah, the social, political, economic environment that we spoke about in one of the models as well, how they look at the different changes in the external environment. so that they have, they're basically protected in advance. So that's how they make or come up with different strategical plans. Now, I know I'm running out of time over here, but I'm just going to quickly explain this Tesco example to you. Not going to read through every bit of the slide because I'll just explain the example in quite short with you.
Are these slides or the or any learning stuff will be provided through email or?
So everything will be given to you on Moodle, uploaded on Moodle.
Okay, because till today I didn't get any email to register on the model. How can I register on it?
Did you get login details for Moodle already?
Uh, I got one email
If you check your
where
email, it says login, LMS login.
not really.
No problem. What I'll do is I will drop a message to the team to check for your login details, and maybe on Monday you should get them then.
Oh, okay, fine.
Sorry, all right. All right, I will drop a message to the team. So what essentially you'll get is you'll get login details to Moodle. So you just need to go on the link that is provided, the URL link, and you click on that link and put in your login details, and you can access all of the course material. If you want, I'll show you how it will look like. Mhm.
So you are giving a lecture as a part time or you are a complete full time?
I'm a full-time associate actually.
Okay,
So in my case, it doesn't come under my courses because I have many courses. This is the OTHM level 7. So it would come up something like this,
okay,
and you will have all of your resources over here. So if you click on that, the PDFs are the presentations, and then you have the recordings of the sessions as well that will be uploaded here. This is like the
okay,
presentation. This is an
okay.
older version of the presentation, so the new one will be uploaded on Moodle, the one that I'm using essentially.
Hmm. Okay.
Perfect.
And one more thing, sorry.
Go on, that's fine.
Yeah, so regarding the assignment, uh, how I'll get the questions for the assignments and
So we have lecture scheduled for the next 3 weeks. You got a email from Jill.
yeah, I got an email, but the problem is that tomorrow's 11:30 p.m. they have mentioned the time.
Oh,
Uh,
it's 11.
yeah,
No, no, no. It's supposed to be 11:30 a.m.
that's cool. Then fine. I was amazed that how come
No, it's
11:30 p.m.
11:30 a.m.
Okay, sure. Was
So I think it's mentioned wrong. Did she send another email correcting the same?
no.
Oh my God. Okay. That's fine. Even in this, it says 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. So I think she made a mistake in scheduling that. But
Mhm.
it's 11:30 a.m. I'll tell her to drop a message on the group so that everyone
And
will.
it is only for strategic human resource management, I think
Yeah.
so.
So all of
And
the links
what
are
other?
for that.
Okay. And what
And
about
also
others?
the last session on that link is the assignment discussion,
Mm-hmm.
is level 7 unit strategic human resource management assignment discussion. So
Yes.
during that session, I will discuss the entire assignment you need to do, and I will also show you where you'll find the resources and how you can approach it.
Okay.
Is that fine?
That's fine. No,
And
I'm just asking about the other units.
oh, for
Like,
that, after 4th of February, this the
okay.
4th, then you will get another email from Jill for the new units because there would be another lecturer for that because I specialize in HR.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's basically what the other unit is,
So, is it possible? Can I do simultaneously two or three units altogether? Because there are, I think, 5 or 6 units are involved.
For strategic leadership, even I would be on a you know what you can do is you can drop an email to Jill and let her know that you want to simultaneously do things. So then she can start scheduling lectures for the other session as well simultaneously.
Yeah, basically, I want to finish as soon as possible.
Also, once you log inside Moodle, okay, you can
Mm-hmm.
already start learning self-learning. So there
Mm-hmm.
are recordings that are available and presentations available. So if you want and you feel that you don't want to attend every session,
Mm-hmm.
you want to just self-learn and look at the recordings, some students just fast forward the recordings and look at it as well. And you feel
Mm-hmm.
that you want to do that and complete your assignments, you are free to do that as well.
Ah, that's cool. Okay.
Okay. All right. So this is just a quick example of test score that I'll go through and then get done with this lecture. I know that we have run out of time actually. Uh,
Okay.
so basically, in short, I'm not reading every little slide, but I'll tell you what this strategy was. So is basically a large supermarket. Over here, it has many associates that work under it, and they continuously make profits every year. And they started this strategy, which essentially is called participative management. This is what they implemented. Now, obviously, what participative management is giving the power or empowering their associates to make decisions for the company. So they took feedback from all of their associates towards, how they can improve their customer relations or how they can improve their business or how they can do better so that they can improve in the market. Because, they compete with so many supermarkets here in the UK. That's why.
Uh,
So they basically gave their associates or employees their champions so that they can make the decisions. Why do they do that? Because the employees, if they knew that this is the decision that they suggested and it's been implemented, they are basically motivated into doing better and basically boost their performance in the organization. So that strategy resulted in obviously different policies coming into place, but also the staff knew about their growth plan and they pushed themselves to do better and get the proper skills to do better. So at the end, they weren't disappointed by management, but instead they were so they were glad that their ideas were taken on board because of which they were pushed to do better. And the training plans that they were provided, they knew why they were being provided that. It wasn't a training that, oh, there's a new training assigned to me, oh, I have to do it again. It wasn't like that. It was more like, you know what, I know why I've been getting this training done. I am motivated to getting this training done, and that's why they did it. And that essentially helped the organization because it also saved them financial resources because employees, there was less turnover. People were willing to basically train and get the development done, and they maintained the growth. And also, the employees were in their career path, they were growing. So that's why that helped them. And also,
mm,
it helped with different strategies in terms of marketing strategy that put into place and their associates and the whole company in general.
mm.
So, yeah. Apart from that, these are the different functions of the HR department. We have already covered them, what all HR does essentially. I spoke about recruitment, about training, about HR analysis. So we are pretty familiar with that. And also how different external forces affect the strategies that are implemented in HR.
Okay, fine.
But yeah, this is the end of today's lecture. Do you have any questions for me at this point?
No, Arshi, thank you so much for your time. And just one thing, if you can notify the team or the G to share the login ID so that I can start self-learning by myself.
Definitely.
So,
I have already dropped them a message, so they should get back to you soon, definitely.
okay, sure. Thank you.
No problem. Take care. Thank you so
Okay,
much. Bye.
thank you. Bye.